wing Nintendo Switch or Nintendo screwdriver. So I'm gonna find one of those. I want to remove those, keep them separated, like the old Offspring song. Pop them in. I always keep one of these Game Boy battery covers for my screws because that's what I like to do. All right, so I'm gonna remove these screws and we'll go from there. All right, moving on to 3 more screws. We got 1 here. We got 2 in the bottom. Now, these are, it's very critical that you realize they're not magnetized. So you're going to want to pick them up with your fingers once they're unscrewed. If you try to just rely on, if your screwdriver is magnetized, you're relying on that, doesn't really work out. You're going to drop a screw. It's a very tiny screw. I did it the first time I opened one of these thinking it's going to stick to my screwdriver, but it does not. It's no bueno, man. Okay, 3 down. Now we've got another one underneath the kickstand here. Right here. Also not really magnetized, so I'll grab some tweezers. Leave it on the edge. No. And then 2 more and we're in. So we're going to get to the Joy-Con rail here. Let's focus a little better. And all we need to worry about is this guy right here, the middle one. Magnets working out. Very nice. 1 more. Cool. Beautiful. And now we're in. We got some clips up top. Up. Dudes, if you guys send one in, I'll make it very clear. Remove the damn cartridge, dudes. Come on. Come on. All right. We're not out of the woods yet. Almost there. We got a couple more screws here. So this is some metal heat shielding. Basically a massive heat sink. Doesn't really do all that much for you. You can absolutely remove it and have totally fine temperatures. And that is definitely an option. So if you want to have a clear back shell so you can see the mod chip, and yeah, it just looks much nicer without the metal here. So you can see the mod chip in action, see it all doing its fucking, got the bare circuit board, all that crap. You can absolutely do that. And if I were to make a V2 switch for myself, that's what I would do. Alternatively, either way, you're going to have to hack up this metal shielding. We'll talk more about that later when we get to it, but yeah, the metal shielding's gotta get hacked up a little bit. All right, gotta give it a little bit of a pull. There's some thermal paste right here, holding her down. I'll put this off to the side for now. All right. Next up is the heat sink, but first we are going to unhook this battery. We do not want this. We don't want this running while we're working on it. It's just a bad idea. Okay, battery's unplugged. Now we can get to work. We got 3 screws here on the heatsink. Okay, heat sinks up. Now we're just gonna remove this foam tape here. At least break it down a little bit. We'll go ahead and just full on remove this one. Okay, now we are we're in the mainframe, dudes. We're gonna take a sewing needle here. I'll have these linked below, as well as other tools that I use for these. Definitely need a sewing needle here. So what we got to do is remove this heat spreader, but it's locked in by a couple tabs. We got one here, got some here, 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 and here. Now what I've noticed after doing a couple of these is typically you can get away with just doing a couple here, like do 1, 2, 3, 4. Once you got it up, you can pull it right off. So you can use your microscope at this point to help you see it. Okay, so I unhooked 1, 2, 3, 4. It's coming up a bit. I should be enough. Yep, there we go. The less you have to do, the better, because it will help it like snap back into place when you go to put it back on. And while we're in here, we're going to need to modify this. We'll save that for later. Okay, now at this point, we are going to want to get the thermal paste off of the CPU. Now this is a bit of a laborious process here. I try to get as much as I can. I do 99 alcohol and Q-tips to just really get as much as I can off first, and then go to town a bit with the soft bristled toothbrush. The problem with just going straight in with a soft bristled brush is it will get spread around quite a bit. It just gets messy. I don't like it, so just try to get as much as you can off with the Q-tip, but also be very mindful of these capacitors. These are what we're going to be soldering to. They're super delicate, so treat them with respect. Treat them as if they are delicate. Don't go scrubbing rigorously on these edges here. You got to be super, super careful. That's why I didn't do any of that with the Q-tip. Now, I got as much as I'm comfortable getting off with the Q-tip. And now I want to take my soft bristled toothbrush, dipped in rubbing alcohol, and we're just really going to focus on getting these bottom ones clean. All this around here, that is totally fine. Get as much off as you want. If you're super OCD and you want to get all of it off, that's totally fine. But the important thing to do is right here, the bottom layer. We need to get that off. We need to get that clean. And then every little bit, we're turning it into a like full-on liquid here. So I'm going to clean it up so it doesn't get smeared around everywhere. Okay, now that's not perfect, but that is pretty good and perfect for what we're going to be doing with this, which is soldering a little ribbon cable to it. Now, before we go any further, I want to make this very clear. Do not attempt this without a microscope. No other mods that we've done here on the channel that I'm telling you need a microscope for, except for these. It's honestly not a hard mod to do, but it's an easy mod to fuck up, and it would be a really easy job to fuck up if you don't have a microscope. It's just silly not to use one. Just use one for this. You're going to want to get one. You can get them I'll link you to a cheap one on Amazon with like an HD display. You're going to want to do that. Get a microscope. Use a microscope. Don't send me... just use a fucking microscope. It's not that hard to get your hands on one, all right? They're cheap, easy, and let's go. Cue the microscope footage. Okay, over Dubsville, USA here, chilling on the microscope. As you can see, I am using the V2 ribbon cable as opposed to the V1, as we're working on a V2. Now, only one of the two is going to line up, as the orientation of those capacitors are different on the different boards. V1, I believe all of the capacitors are vertical. I will throw up a picture, if I remember to right now, of what a V1 looks like. So it's only going to line up one way. The main thing here is get those ground points there below SP1, SP2, and on the right, those you're going to want that underneath that metal shielding. And I like to lock in the left one first. Once everything's nice and lined up, and then we come in with the tweezers. We apply a bit of pressure and then reflow it just to make sure it's flush on the board there. Doing the same with the other side. Solder it up, push down, reflow it. You're good to go. Now at this point, I like to take my tweezers and push down on those connectors there, just to make sure it's as flush as the board as possible. Just makes the whole process easier. Now at this point, you're going to want to flux it up. And this one I did a little different than I usually do. The ideal way for me is to have enough solder on my tip, not too much, but not too, just a nice, decent bead. Start little, and if you need more, go a little bit more. But ideally, you should be able to just touch the pad here, and it will tin itself, not needing to feed solder in as I do here. Most of the time you can get away with just having a bit on your tip, but once it's all tinned up, then it's good. I like to just get everything situated for the most part, and I come back in and make sure to clean up those joints. So that's locked in there. So we're going on to the other side, and the big thing you want to know, like, don't keep your eye in there too long, and never, just be really careful to not heat up both sides of any of the capacitors at the same time, because if you do that, you're going to flow it right off the board. They're super duper small, and it's going to be stuck to your tip. You might not be able to find it, and then you're probably going to have to order a bunch of caps from Mouser, and you're just going to be sitting on this install for about a week, and then putting a new one in isn't going to be easy. So I like to go over a lot of these a couple times, just to where I could really see that these joints are making a good contact. You can very carefully come in with a multimeter, do continuity testing, just to double check. So those are looking pretty all right. I believe at this point I clean it up and reflow it, and at some point I believe I bridge the capacitor on the right, which we're going to keep that in so I can show you what to do if that's the situation you're in. I just like to be very, very 100% about all of these joints before moving on. So as doing this, I believe I bridged it. You never, ever, like, just don't use soldering wick on these. Almost 100% of the emails I get of people asking me for help because they messed up their installs is because somebody tried desoldering one of these, and typically with desoldering wick. Just don't go doing that. If you bridged 2 points together, you don't need to wick it. You can easily just flow it off, as I'll show you very, very soon here. So here I go again to flow it up. I believe this is where I bridge those two caps together. So the alcohol's still wet. That's why we're getting a wonky joint there. Got a bit more flux. There we go. Yeah, showing you the worst possible scenario. So if you get yourself in a pinch like this, don't break out the desoldering wick. You're just going to want to touch it and move your tip down. There you go. That's it. Easy. He's linking up again. All right, so if you've made it this far, pat yourself on the back. The hard part is over. This is nice and installed. Now the next step is we're going to need to remove our NAND chip here. Now it's connected to the board right here, but there's a little bit of adhesive connecting it to this metal shielding. So once again, we'll take the old 99 alcohol soft bristle brush. Just kind of get in there. We're kind of going to flood this adhesive a bit just to make it a little bit more, a little softer, a little easier to get up. Now really we want to pull from here, because this is where it's connected. Just keep it gentle. Don't go at this super, whoops, sorry, bumped the camera. Don't come at it super aggressively. I'm loosening it up with my tweezers there very carefully. Get a little bit of leverage on the bottom side here because of the overhang, which is nice. Just kind of working away that adhesive, freeing it from the heat shielding here. There we go. Pop right off. Okay, now we're going to need to worry about putting this guy back on. However, because this cable is popping up, we're going to need to modify it a little bit. So what I like to do is get my flush cuts and a good marker. We're going to bend this whole section upwards here, starting at the tab. Just like that. And then I like to use some scissors to trim it. So let's get this guy out of the way. Okay. So just one clean cut. Just try to get it all lined up. Alright, that's a pretty clean cut. Should look something like this. Just make sure you got no jagged edges bending down into where the cable's going to be. And you should be good. Now would be a good time to clean all the thermal paste off. this, 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 and this guy right here. And if you're dumb like me, your hands as well. So I want to hit all that with some rubbing alcohol, Q-tips, toothbrush, the whole nines. And then we'll go from there. All right, we're almost out of the woods, dudes. So the next step here is to plug this guy in. This one, we're going to want to be very careful with this. So we have to bend this back. I'm going to use tweezers. We're going to bend this back and plug it in. However, the joints that we soldered to the CPU are very brittle, so don't go just tugging on this cable. You don't want to apply any pressure over here. So just be careful, take your time, wrap around, and plug it in. Okay, got it, dudes. Now we gotta clip it down. Also fairly easier said than done. Okay, it's all clipped in. That looks pretty nice. So now we're just gonna fold this over like so. We're gonna wanna plug this in to where the NAND was plugged in before. Should line up fairly easily. And there she is. All plugged up. Ready to rip. Good stuff, good stuff. Okay, so I bent the cable back for the chip right here, just so we can go ahead and work calmly in this area. Now, we're going to be reattaching the heat spreader. My cable's kind of bending up a little bit wonkily, so I want to push it down before going any further. Use my tweezers just to get the tension coming to this end of the chip here. Okay, so I want to do one last once over on the die here. Get it real cleaned up. I'll add a little pea size thermal paste here. There she is. I'll get it clipped in the best you can. If you need to start bending some tabs back, feel free to do so. However, we're going to be adding the heatsink, so you shouldn't need to worry about that too much. Okay, so one more pea-sized bit of thermal paste here. That'll do. What we're gonna do is reattach the heatsink. Start in the back here. You know, it can be a bit of a pain getting it to fit in back there. Once you got it, you're good to go. So we got 3 screws. We need to replace 3 of the little silver screws. There it is. We got one more critical step here before we test it all out. Is we are going to fit this through the fan hole. Just like so. And get everything lined up as if we were putting it back together. Now here's what I'm going to do. I want to temporarily put 2 screws in, not very tight, 2 of the corners just to keep it locked in. Okay. And what we're going to do, use a bit of tape here to tape it up. And we're going to cut that part of the shield so it can fit nice and snugly back together. Now if you don't want to care about it being precise, suppose you can just cut out this whole section here. And get it nice and clean though. Then I'm going to take my scissors, just cut along the edge of the tape. That's a nice fit right there. Very nice, dudes. Very nice. I want to take this opportunity to do a bit more cleanup. Any of this god-awful thermal paste that got all over the place. So we're going to make this nice and pretty. Plug the battery back in, test it out. To the final touches. And before I forget, dudes, if you don't want to put the metal shielding back, what you can do is cut along these lines. Da 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 da. All you need is this SD card port here to put down before setting everything back up. The only reason you want to keep that is without it, it's just the SD card doesn't sit properly. You're going to want to at least cut this guy out right here. Put it back, reassemble, and skip the whole masking, all of that. Okay, so remember that NAND we removed earlier? We're going to want to plug that in. But before we plug in the NAND, we need to plug in the USB port. Now what this is, you'll likely never need to use this, but it might help you out in a pinch. So this is a USB debug port. I'm gonna have a video. It's not uploaded yet, but I've got a video coming to the Mariko playlist. Should be up here if I remember to put it up there. Mariko playlist. Go ahead, follow that for everything to do specifically with these patch switch consoles, the core, the switch lights, whole playlist over that. USB port. You use that if you brick during a firmware update for the mod chip itself. So if it fails to flash for some reason, or you power off middle of a mod chip update, you can pull off the back casing, hook this up, and get back in action. Hey, there we go. We should really insulate this whole area here. So I'm going to get some Captain tape and do that. Okay, I got the heat spreader all nice and insulated here. Now, don't forget, plug the battery back in. Yeah, I suppose now would be as good a time as ever to give this a test. Blue light here. Green light here. Would you look at that, huh? Boot that, baby. Let's put it back together. Okay, so I want to dab a little bit more caramel thermal compound on this heat sink, as is the Nintendo tradition. We're all lined up. Nice gravy.